get right to the questions because you guys have put a lot of questions in ahead of time this week. We're loving that you're doing that. First question, looking for some advice. We need to do an eye exam for our son, requested by the school. He is 4 years old, nonverbal, does not really like having light shined into his eyes, ears, etc. I see this as being a very difficult task to complete and get usable results. Any suggestions on where to go or what to do will be greatly appreciated. I just want to give an asterisk for all of our questions here. Of course, we can never be in a position, and I would never ask you, Dr. Granpeesheh, to give child-specific advice in this kind of format because that would be a disrespect to you and to the child. All of our kids are different and they have different needs, but we can talk in generalities to help people steer in the right direction, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a little difficult to refer families. I don't know where you're living.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, there are ophthalmologists that specialize in these aspects of visual problems. Developmental optometrists also will be able to help you. And they do a series of tests and they look at things like binocularity, or being able to focus both eyes on the same object, or tracking ability, and they'll do a series of tests with your child. And then they actually also do, especially developmental optometrists will give you exercises that you can do and that you can ask your team of therapists to do as well.
Yeah.
Also, we added a few years ago, because a lot of our children go through this process and it's really important, in our skills online program in the motor domain, there's a whole section for visual motor.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of those exercises detailed in that section as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say as a parent that it took me a while to figure out that my child needed to go to the eye doctor. So he was, I think, 6.5 by the time he went. And I was amazed that if you go to the right person, how much they can accomplish. I thought my child couldn't sit there, that he wouldn't be able to do it, that they wouldn't be able to figure out what was going on. But it is kind of amazing what they can determine with the tests and what they can get our kids to do.
Absolutely. And these are not, normal issues. They're not distance or far or near vision. We're talking things like some of the children actually have visual fields that are restricted. So they will have more of an ability to see things peripheral vision rather than central vision, or other kids will have specific problems in their perceptual ability. So they're able to see things if it's on a clear background, but not if there's too much chaos in the background of the object they're trying to find. Or, like I said, tracking is one of the things that our kids are lacking, or being able to focus on, and I see this with some of my kids, where if you hold something too far, too close, or even down on a table versus in front of them, they have problems determining what it is. And when you can figure those things out, it helps the child tremendously.
Yeah, so very worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Very worthwhile to go and be heartened by the fact that you really can get good results. Even if your child is skittish, there are doctors who are trained specifically in those kinds of things.
Right.
And also want to put out there, we were able to ask our local support group, for suggestions, and got a great doctor recommendation. So wherever you are in the world, maybe that's a thing to ask other parents.
Other parents, and specifically looking for developmental optometrists.
Developmental optometrist. Okay, great question. Okay, this was a question that came in last week that we didn't get a chance to. My son eats paper. Is that something I should be concerned about?
I mean, that is a good question. I guess what I would suggest is that you do have some testing done, and this is sort of a blood test generally to see if your son is deficient on any particular nutrients. And then, you want to do that anyway, regardless of if he's eating paper or any other object, because he might be trying to receive the nutrient that he's deficient on by doing that. But And otherwise, then once you have determined that and supplement with whatever nutrients, then of course that is something you need to shape out of his life essentially and remove.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I know we've had people ask questions about pica in particular before. If it's just the paper, we're looking for the nutrients, or is pica could be...
Pica is just ingesting anything that's non-edible.
Okay.
So, we have kids who will eat rocks. They will eat, they'll pull off stuff from the wall and eat it. One of my kids particularly ate a lot of like things that had glue on them. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's one of those things that could have initiated because of a deficiency, but now it's become a learned habit or a behavior. And obviously it's toxic, so we need to stop the child from doing it. But at the same time, it's important to make sure that he didn't, or he did, find out if the child initiated this behavior due to some nutritional deficiency.
Okay. And when you talk about shaping this behavior out of their life, are we talking about using ABA and eventually...
Yeah, I mean, this is just a very basic replacement type of thing where you will prevent the behavior, but you will need to find a replacement behavior. So a lot of times we use chewing gum, which we can teach our kids to chew, and that helps replace this type of behavior. It'll be different for each child, but it's replacing it with something so that the child doesn't actually swallow things that are not supposed to be swallowed.
Right.
Yeah.
But so in all cases, we wouldn't just let something like this go.
Never. Okay. Never. Of course. I mean, it's not only let's say inappropriate behavior, it's dangerous for the child.
Absolutely. Okay, good to know. Okay, we had somebody just write in a question. I'm going to put it up on the live feature so that everybody can see it. How do you get the school to use skills? I'm thinking about starting at the first of the year when they are very rigid on programming they want us to use.
Right. We have a lot of contracts and training going on with a variety of schools across the country and for skills. And it's been extremely useful for the schools. I think part of the problem with skills is that it is too complex. It's funny because I was just saying yesterday that we spent, 15 years writing this thing, and we're so obsessive ourselves in wanting to make sure we share every bit of information with the families that we made it so technical and detailed. And I think then we spent another year trying to make it easier, and lighter. So the hard part about getting it to teachers has been that it is just so technical that I think it scares people. We just completed, our training department just completed a teacher training, which is fantastic. It's, I think, somewhere around 65 hours of e-learning for teachers, and it's all live video. In fact, they used the studio, I think, and it's all live video of a variety of our senior board-certified folks doing these various trainings for teachers. So it's very teacher-friendly. It's much more comprehensible than the actual e-learning other programs that we have, which are much more technical. So I would say you should start with that, because I think that kind of grabs the attention of teachers and makes them interested, and then they come to realize that there are many ways you can use these ABA techniques in the classroom. And once you've done that, I think it becomes a lot easier for the teacher to really easily acclimate to skills. I mean, we are, one of the projects that I'm hoping to be able to get involved with in the next couple of months, or 2013 at least, is to sort of redo skills into multiple versions. We're making a version that's just for teachers, another version that's really just for higher functioning Asperger's, PDD children, and that sort of thing. And skills, of course, and this parent sounds familiar with skills, is more content and what you are supposed to, how it's like the content of what you teach children, and it's a whole supermarket of things, and you pick from them. versus the e-learning or the trainings, which are process and procedure. So I think whenever we've had teachers get involved with the procedural training, the e-learning first, they tend to be a lot more likely to go to skills.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing is you should know that our skills department is actively engaged in going out to schools, doing training for schools, getting them into skills. And I think one of the key benefits, I think, for schools as a whole is that skills allows the teacher and even, the autism specialist, the resource specialist, the administrator to be able to see the ongoing progress of the child, because all of the graphs that it provides is very valuable to the school administration.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I love skills. I use skills and I love skills, and so I'm probably the biggest fan of skills.
Right.
But I love that you're doing all these other things, and I totally agree that as a former teacher, you're busy, you have a lot of things to do, that if we give the training to the teachers first, I think then they want to use skills.
Absolutely.
And when they were doing the teacher trainings in the studio, I have to leave at a certain time every day to go home and get my child, and so I would be outside in the control room, and I would be listening, and it would be hard for me to leave. I wanted to listen more, and I'm so excited that they're available now. And I have said, I think these little trainings make perfect holiday gifts for your teacher.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm planning on giving, and it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it gives your teacher their CEU credits, continuing education credits, so it's a benefit to them.
Absolutely.
It looks good on their resume, and your child gets a teacher who's more prepared, and it's really affordable.
And you can, I'm not sure if it's on the skills website right now, but all of these are accessible on the IBT website, the Institute for Behavioral Training, and that's our training organization. And so if you go on there, you'll see that there's a whole package for teachers, but you can also pick and choose the individual modules.
And like I said, incredibly affordable to give as a holiday gift, and you could pick the one that you most want your child's teacher to have, and gift that to them. I'm asking them to make gift certificates for them so that you can hand, and we'll get back to you on that.
Idea.
Isn't that?
Right.
And because it benefits everyone. It literally is and then you don't have to go shopping.
Right.
You're just done, and everybody benefits from it. And we're going to be talking more about those trainings coming up next week. So we'll let you guys know more about that. But really phenomenal. I literally would sit at the door through the window and listen and go, oh, this is great. Do I really have to leave?
It's just a nice modality.
Very riveting. Okay, so wonderful. And again, if you want some help from the skills team, Merrick Williams let him know who your school is, and he'll contact them for you. And
that's right.
Yeah, so Merrick Williams is the name, and you can, if you want his email address, we can get that for you. Just write in to me, and we'll make sure that you get that. Okay, we have a question about sleep. The question was, sleep is our biggest challenge. Our son sometimes stays awake for 34 hours at a stretch.
Oof.
I know, it's horrible. They write in and say other times he won't stay asleep for more than 2 hours. And I know we had somebody else ask a question about this, and I'm wondering if this goes hand in hand, because they were saying that their child has seizures, and not this person, but another person, that their child will stay awake for hours on end, and they know that a series of seizures are coming. Is there any kind of relation?
Gosh. Well, of course there is. There's no doubt a connection. If your child does have seizures, then the seizure activity could be waking him or her.
Oh, okay.
And it could be subclinical seizures, so you're not even able to see it physically, but seizures are happening. So they're low enough where you can't physically see it. That is, like, if your child is awake for that many hours, that's an enormous thing. You have to deal with this right away. Like, this is very, very important. So the first thing is I would definitely get in touch with a sleep clinic, sleep disorders clinic, and what they will do is a sleep EEG. So they will actually have places like UCLA here in LA. UCLA does this as well, and they have you take your child in, and they actually have the child go to sleep, and will then have an EEG hooked up so they can see brain activity during sleep. Now that's really important to rule those types of things out, because if there are seizures, that's a whole different issue, and you will want to look at medication or diet or any other intervention to deal with seizures, because seizures actually tend to increase with age. So it's not something that's going to go away, it's actually going to get worse. That's important. Now, otherwise, it could be a number of other things. I mean, a lot of my kids have sleep disorder and they don't have seizures. Okay. And when you look at it could be so many different things. Like, for instance, just the child's sleep regulation cycle is off, or the child has such sensitive hearing that they're woken by so many different things during the night that we don't even know are happening. There's a number of things. And it is very important for the child to sleep, because I mean, not only how can you function if you're not sleeping, obviously, but I mean, if you don't get at least 5 hours, and this is a child, so he probably needs more than that, but if you don't have straight 5 hours of sleep straight, you're not really producing the neurotransmitters that you need. So your serotonin is off. I mean, all of your neurotransmitters will be dysregulated. Right. And that will cause a million different issues during the day. Anything from anxiety to obsessive behavior to inattention to hyperactivity, you name it. Wow. So a lot of stuff is really connected to the sleep we get. So I guess the only thing I could say is, like, you have to determine if this has become a behavioral issue. Sometimes I have kids where they will fall asleep or they will not sleep because part of their routine has become, I will get up at such and such time and go into mom and dad's room, and it's the middle of the night for them and they're not going to deal with it, so they let me crawl in and sleep there. I mean, that's a behavioral issue that is dealt with quite separately, and you have to have a therapist actually sit at the door of the child's room and make sure that overnight the child stays and sleeps. Wow. But when you have a child who's not sleeping like 30 somewhat hours in a row, it doesn't sound like a learned behavior so much as the child's sleep cycle is completely dysregulated. Yeah. Now, that then turns us to melatonin, which is intended to regulate your sleep cycle. Now, I've found from a lot of families and people who use melatonin that regular melatonin on its own that has a sleep cycle which is 4 to 6 hours. So what it does is it'll put your child to sleep within about 20-30 minutes, but then your child wakes up 4 to 6 hours after. And that's kind of problematic as well. Right. So, you know, I don't want to endorse any particular products, but me personally, the product that I have, and I travel a lot, so melatonin is very useful for me because I have to adjust to massive time changes, and I have to do that fast, because I go to work as soon as I land somewhere. So the product that I use is called Tranquil Sleep. And Tranquil Sleep is a combination of melatonin and tryptophan, 5-HTP. And tryptophan, in combination with melatonin, tends to have a higher effect. It just keeps you sleeping, or, you know, once you're in the sleep cycle, it tends to last a little bit longer. So doesn't wake you all of a sudden in 4 to 6 hours. And that's a chewable, and it comes in 3 milligram tablets that are chewable and very delicious. And
is it an over-the-counter thing?
It's over-the-counter. You can actually order Tranquil Sleep on Amazon. That's where I order it. And it is...
and it's safe for children.
It's totally safe. It's a very good product. Melatonin as a whole is a positive thing. It's not a negative. Not only is it safe, but it is a very good thing because it's a precursor to neurotransmitters. Like taking melatonin is a healthy thing. So... Yeah, so maybe try that out. As an adult, you take 2 because 6 milligrams is good for an adult. For children, you can take 3. You can cut a tablet in half and take 1.5, depending on the size of the child.
Okay.
But I would really start working on this process with your child. It's really important to try to, and even if you're able to just start with getting your child to sleep maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then increase that, shape it up. You should also be looking at other things that could be causing your child to stay awake. For instance, a lot of my kids who have gastrointestinal problems have difficulty sleeping. So, you know, you need to check on that. That's critical, obviously. And that's what we always talk about, Shannon. It's like the health of the child is so much more important than anything else at this point. Because if your child has health issues like bloating, let's say, or indigestion or reflux or any type of discomfort, they're not going to sleep.
Right.
And so you have to deal with those types of things and gradually increase the time frame that the child's able to sleep. It is very serious if you have a child who's staying up 30 hours. That's extremely unusual and it'll lead to a lot of other problems.
So this should become a priority then. If
over
you've got everything else.
I mean, I would even say, as a behaviorist, I would even say forget about anything you're doing behaviorally right now. Deal with this. Yeah. Because, I mean, it'll make a huge difference in your child's life. I mean, and another thing is, it all connects, sort of. If you do think your child might have some GI issues, then that takes you back to evaluate his diet, evaluate you know, whether you need to take him off certain products like casein, gluten, etc. That might help his GI symptoms. It might help him relax more. Those types of things.
And I imagine too, I mean, I know when we first started ABA, the first thing that we had to deal with was the fact that my child wasn't sleeping until late in the middle of the night. We weren't going 30 hours at a stretch, but I wasn't getting to sleep until 2:30 in the morning. And I can speak as a parent, you know, my ability to deal with things was severely hampered.
Absolutely.
Because I wasn't getting rest, because he wasn't getting rest. So I can't even imagine 34 hours, what that does to the family, what it does to the household.
That's right.
Everything would start to deteriorate, I would imagine.
Yeah, and don't forget, you know, sometimes we think we shouldn't do the typical things. Well, do the typical things as well. You know, like, in other words, don't give the child things to drink 2 hours before he's about to go to sleep, you know. Maybe give him a warm bath. Maybe, you know, make sure that he has a relaxing environment within which, or a quiet environment. Do all those typical things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful advice. I think we should take a break. We got a bunch more questions coming in.
Great.
But let's take a break, and we're going to be back with more questions with Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have a question that just came in on the live feature to Dr. Doreen. I would first like to thank you from the depths of my heart for everything that you've done. Boy, I'm with this parent. We're huge advocates of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and we feel so incredibly lucky to have had access to such an effective treatment program.
That's great.
They go on to say, my son is almost 5. He has received ABA services for a little over 3 years now. My question for you is, when all resources are being utilized and a strong, healthy support system has been a consistent part of our lives from the beginning, how does a parent focus on the progress and stability of their child's life instead of the fear of their child being left behind? When does a parent start planning financially, socially, and psychologically for their child's long-term care? It's a great question.
Oh, wow, that is a great question. That's an amazing question. First of all, thank you to the parent who wrote that. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me when I hear from parents and that we've made an impact in your life. That's what my life is all about, so I really appreciate that. Secondly, you know, I think you would probably know the answer to that better than I would. Really, it sounds like you've been a very involved parent for a long time, because if your child's close to 5 and you've been doing good therapy for 3 years, then that means you got your child involved in treatment pretty early, very young age. So you're an expert. And I would say that it's amazing that you have actually come 3 years into it and have survived everything, because these programs are so intensive and going through everything with your child is so amazing. It's amazingly difficult and stressful. You know, the sooner you plan, I think, the better for your sanity. It is important, like all of our children, obviously, to look at future planning for the child. I don't know where your child is at right now. Obviously, if your child's at a point where you need to do, you know, planning for future college, that's one thing. Future financial, perhaps ongoing care, that's another thing. Thank God, with the coming of insurance funding now almost everywhere, and it's increasing even more next year, we have a sense of relief, at least, that our children will have some form of coverage into adulthood.
Yeah.
It's no longer being cut off at an early age.
Right.
So thank God you have that. But certainly, you know, the emotional aspects of this, the being able to handle all of this is just tremendous. We're starting a program here at CARD, which actually all of us are getting training, or several of us who are licensed clinicians are getting training in this program. It's called ACT therapy. I think it stands for Acceptance Commitment Therapy, or I hope that's not wrong.
Nope, that's
and
right.
We're all learning about this, because the whole concept behind ACT therapy is to you know, recognize the facts, accept them, commit to your goals, make your goals realistic, and see the positives, and be able to focus on the positives, and be able to continue to grow and evolve. So once we're all trained, which I think we're getting that training in January or February, then we will be providing that through a lot of our licensed MFTs to our parents, so that we can help guide and train parents on this process. You sound like you're familiar with this.
Well, I certainly have talked to Evelyn Gould about that, because it's very exciting to me, and I can't wait for it to trickle down to me when you guys are trained, because I have heard the benefits of this kind of looking at things. We talk about it from time to time with Evelyn when she's on the show, and this idea of accepting what is, and being able to move through it, because it's so hard as a parent. Sometimes you get stuck.
Oh, it's unbelievably hard. And it goes back to, and you know, I would never even imagine that I could understand what some of our parents go through. Like, it really is beyond my scope, right, of living through some of the things that I hear from my parents, from the parents that I know for years. But my general concept of life, I think, applies always in these scenarios as well. My general concept is, obviously, most often we're given things that we can handle, even though we think we can't.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, we handle them, right? When they hit us, we're traumatized, and somehow we get through it.
Yeah.
Now, we either get through it by using some really not so functional means, like procrastinating, denying, avoiding, blaming, all those types of things.
Spending,
Spending, hiding, blame, whatever, you know, becoming angry, becoming punitive, whatever it is. Or we go through it by doing, like, accepting, growing, becoming more patient, becoming more brave, less fearful, more, you know, produce something like this show that is all really you, and this whole program, which is functional and adaptive and helpful to millions of others. It's just, so this is a functional process, you know, and that's what life is, right? We're given opportunities to learn. It's funny, because every day I write and read some things about this, because I want to keep it very active in my process, my own process. And if we're able to, and this morning I was reading and I was like, so simple, so great, you know, it's about the concept of moving up this ladder of enlightenment, or of whatever you may call it. You know, it's what is the goal of life, is to get better and better and better up this ladder of I guess, self-understanding, patience, humanity, all of that. And these and you know, if you really think about it, during good times, we don't learn. right? I mean, good times are good times. We don't learn. Yeah. We're just happy. We're being reinforced by God or the universe just to keep going.
Yeah.
And bad times are difficult events. Let's put it that way. Difficult events are opportunities for growth, for learning. It's only during difficult events that we really learn. And so in some way, if you look at those difficult events as you are the lucky person, the blessed person that has been given this opportunity for growth, then use it. Benefit from it, learn from it, become a stronger person, become fearless, become someone who will go on and set an example for others, and so on and so forth. And that, I think, is the core to, if you can take the experience of everything you're going through. I mean, and in most cases, it's not just the trauma of the first day of diagnosis that we go through with our kids, but it's the ongoing fear and worry, like what will happen if, what will happen if, what will happen if, and all of that. And you are the strong, blessed individual who has the capacity to handle this, and that's why you've been given this. And so you have the opportunity to keep learning and trusting that you are where you're supposed to be, your child is where he's supposed to be, and that you will be fine and that he will be fine, and that you will both not only survive this, but you will have the opportunity to make the best of where you are, And I look at my kids, and no matter what level, I look at my kids who've recovered from it, and they talk to me and they say, yeah, a lot of stuff is still hard. Some things are still hard. But then on the other end, those same kids are so amazing in terms of self-analysis, and they're just such sweethearts, and they're just so kind and non-egotistical, and they've learned already more than anyone else would in the first 20 years of their lives. Yeah. And yesterday I was telling one of my kids, we all have hard things to get over within ourselves, right? It's not just unique to you. Right. We all have that. It's just that with you, you're so focused on it because, you're trying to fix yourself all the time. Yeah. So, I wish I could have a better answer for that in terms of when do you, but it's an ongoing process. I think you just need to look at the fact that there are so many positives that can come from your experience, and trust the universe, trust God, and know that you're going exactly where you're meant to go.
Yeah, one of the things, the big jokes in our house is that autism, first and foremost, will teach you to be in the moment whether you want to or not.
That's right.
Because things change.
Right.
And I remember when Jem was 5, and my view of what was going to happen for him was so different from when he was 3.
Absolutely.
And now he's 9.
I know.
And it's so different from when he was 5.
I know.
And I have to keep up with him. He sort of defines it for me, and I run to keep up with him.
Right.
But it is, in that respect, I mean, I'm somebody who, I don't like to be in the moment by my actions, and yet here I am doing a live show. It's a big ha-ha on me, right? And my child forces me on a regular basis by the way he grows and the way he moves, and of course the autism too. It forces me to be in the moment, and that's a gift.
Right, and to not fear. I mean, I think the everything in life, everything has to do with fear. Yeah, and it's if I could give you a guarantee, right? If I could say, I promise you, here's a guarantee, this is the ultimate truth, and if you believed me, right, that God, or whatever God you believe in, universal intelligence, all the way to any religion that you have, whatever God you believe in, if I could guarantee you that God said, you are going down this path because this is the absolute best path for you that I've chosen, God has chosen for you. And by the way, I'm sorry, but it's very different from what you had in mind.
Right.
Okay, so how many times in life have we had the experience where we really, really want something, and then the opposite happens, and you 5 years later look back and say, thank God, I didn't actually get what I wanted. Right. But the truth is, with autism, that, but it's just a life-changing event.
Yeah, it is.
And it changes the entire rest of your life. And you have a vision of your life already as an adult, and you have to throw that out and just go with, okay, this is the new vision. But if you truly believed that this is the best thing because God chose it for you and there's nothing better than this, your fear level would go significantly down. You wouldn't fear because you're going down some path that the universe wants you to be going.
And I think a lot of times, we have the fear, but there really isn't time for the fear. There really isn't time.
And the fear is only because we planned a whole bunch of stuff that may not happen.
I think you're right.
And that's the thing. It's just like recognizing the fact that maybe what you planned is not going to happen, but something else will happen, and it's great.
Something else will, yes. And look to our kids. Amazing. Okay, sort of another sleep-related question. Mealtime and bedtimes always turn into battles. What am I doing wrong?
Oh, gosh, that's a big question.
That's a huge question.
I don't know that I can necessarily specifically answer that because there's so many answers to that.
Right, because there's so many things that you could be doing better. Not necessarily that you're doing something wrong, but
and there's so many things that could be contributing to that, and they're different as well. So clearly, if mealtime and bedtime turn into battles, the very first thing is that means whatever you are doing is not what your child wants, right? Because he's fighting because he's trying to avoid whatever it is you're doing.
It's not working.
And it's not working, right. So let's talk about sleep time. So sleep time, obviously your child doesn't want to go to sleep, and that's why he's fighting it. Mealtime, he's fighting it perhaps because the foods that you're giving him are foods he doesn't want, or this has now just become a form of his gaining attention from you.
Right.
So again, the function of each of those behaviors is really important because they have different reasons, right? So you have to identify, why is it that he fights back when it's sleep time? Why is it that he fights back when it's meal time? Once you understand that, you'll understand the reason, his reason, and then what you do is you modify your own behavior based on that. So it's very hard to say what you are not doing correctly or what would be more effective. Right. General guidelines are, once you know what your child wants and doesn't want, set a rule that's fair, but is... you can't give in on certain rules, right? I mean, our kids need to go to sleep. No kid really wants to go to sleep when they're supposed to go to sleep, but okay, we're going to be fair about it. I'll give you an activity you can do in your room perhaps that you like, or I'll delay it 30 minutes, but I can't delay it 5 hours, right? I mean, so there's certain societal rules that you have to go with as well. So set those rules, try to be as fair as you can with them, reward your child significantly for doing anything that is an approximation to meeting those rules. This is the shaping process. So let's say your rule is that the child needs to sleep at 8. Then you might want to start by reinforcing your child if he is actually in bed by 9, and then gradually fade that backwards so you hit your deadline of 8. But it's just too complicated for me to go into shaping procedures for this. But in general, what I'll say is a lot of the time we get so ingrained in the battle with the child that we don't realize either the multitude of things. Either I'm not being fair with the rule, or I'm not reinforcing any approximation to meeting my goal, or I'm not really paying attention to what it is he's trying to communicate, or I'm just getting involved with back and forth bantering over something, which is always an attention-seeking type thing. Right. So one of the first lessons is, once you set the rule and your child clearly is given the rule or instruction, you don't haggle about it. You don't go back and forth. If you need to physically take your child to his room and put him in his bed, you do that. I know it's tough, but if you do it 3 or 4 nights in a row, believe me, your child will go through what's called an extinction burst. He'll react stronger first, but then he'll realize this is not going away, and I need to admit, I have to deal with this rule, and then they will. With eating, it's different because that becomes a feeding issue, and that goes back to finding out what things are maybe your child is having a reaction to. And I don't want to call it an allergy, but kids have reactions to some of these peptides that they can't digest. Yeah. So maybe he's avoiding something that at some point caused him some pain, or he's avoiding things that are similar to that in some way, so it's now generalized. Yeah. Or there's other people at the dinner table, and this is your child's way. He's learned that if he throws a fit at dinner, he might get out of having to eat this, and then in the end he'll get what he wants. Those are all mistakes that can be corrected. Yeah. But having said that, separate the two issues, because these are each big issues. Right. And then a good behaviorist can easily run you through these things. Okay. In fact, one of the things, that's really great, thank you, because one of the things we're trying to do, as you know, Shannon, is to produce a bunch of small video clips, like 5-minute instructional things on various issues. Yeah. And sleeping, obviously, and eating are two unbelievably important ones. So Absolutely. Those are good topics for us to hit as well.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing, if we condense it all down, is that these things, these battles, are infinitely fixable with ABA techniques if you were working
Absolutely.
with a behaviorist.
Absolutely. They're fixable. Absolutely.
But to give any kind of widespread advice about it would be a disservice, because there are probably very specific things that are happening that you need to address.
Yes, exactly. And every child is different, and so the function of the behavior might be completely different. Right. I don't know why your child is choosing to fight with you during dinner. Right. As I mentioned, a few different reasons could be leading to that. And once you identify that function, it is a very straightforward procedure. Okay. It's going to be tough on you, right? But because it's just a habit,
right? But not necessarily easy, but infinitely fixable if you get the right guidance.
Absolutely fixable. No
but it
question.
Really requires eyes there looking at it and seeing it to help you.
And possibly even, as you know, our therapists attend dinner with the family when there's issues like that. Our therapists will actually stay overnight when there are issues like that. So. If you have the ability to have a therapist actually be there, this is very, very helpful.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Okay, this is a question. Somebody writes in and says, how do I know when my child doesn't need a one-on-one aide at school? The school says he doesn't need an aide, but I think he does.
Okay, that's a really good question. Mm-hmm. So I guess that again it's so hard to answer these questions not knowing the level of the child. Right. So let's say it's a child, if your child is, you know what, you have to make that decision. Okay. So the way that you do that is, first of all, there's a reason that your behaviorist is sending therapists or aides to the school, I would assume, and you'd have to start with having a conversation with your supervisor or behavioral specialist and see why they feel the child needs an aide in school. A lot of times our aides, the minute that the school says we don't need a shadow here anymore, we will do specific observations to see what's going on and whether or not we can fade. And it might be a scenario for you where your shadow can fade some of the hours, not all of them perhaps. I find that the children who do very well in classroom setting, like academic settings, I will really try to fade the aide out as fast as possible, the shadow, because I want the child to start paying attention to the teacher. But then I will keep the shadow for like recess or lunch period or those types of things, because that's when my child still needs some behaviors to like socialize and those types of things. So it really has to do with what your child still needs. Yeah. If your child is interacting well with other kids, following instructions of a teacher, able to keep up with the classroom and able to keep up with social stuff, you don't need an aide there. Really simple. Those are the things that we benefit from in school. However, if your child is not able to keep up with those particular things, you still do. I mean, as a general rule, you want to fade your shadow when your child is able to function at the same level level independently.
Yeah. I just want to point out, because you said something really important, and a lot of parents write in and say that they have an aide, but the aide doesn't accompany the child to lunch or to recess. It's sort of a big issue. And I want to point out that you said that, you fade the aide in the classroom a lot of time, not all the time, but sometimes more before the time at lunch. And I think as parents, that's something that we need to step up our game a little bit at that IEP meeting to advocate for our child that they have that aide during that time.
That's right.
And IDEA provides for that it does say that our child has to be prepared for life after school, and we can use that to get that aide during those important times.
And as you know, another thing that we do at CARD is we generally fight strong to get our shadows in the classrooms. But in a lot of other states, it's not really easy to have a private therapist shadow in the classroom, and you have to have the school aide, that's why we also, then it takes us back to the teacher and aide training that we produce, because I can't tell you the number of times, and this is nothing against schools, but it's I have personally seen the shadow who's supposed to be with our child, and I'm observing the child. The shadow is outside taking a smoke break or something, and it's just, it is, if you have a shadow in there, make sure that the shadow is really well trained and is working together with your in-home team, because everything has to kind of generalize from the in-home program to the school.
Yeah, it's like another full-time job.
It is very important.
It is something that's important that we have to do. Okay, we've only got time, I think, for one more question, but hi, Dr. Doreen. My question today concerns seeking advice about iPad apps that would be the most beneficial for my 10-year-old mainstream son who has very immature speech and needs help with acting age appropriate. Are you familiar with anything that you could recommend? I'm getting an iPad for Christmas and want to use it to help him. Thank you all for all you're doing for so many.
That's really nice. Thank you. I wish I knew. We're putting together a good list, because the stuff that's coming out on iPads is amazing. Like every day there's a new one.
Right.
I don't know of a particular brand or something like that. There's a lot of programs coming out now. It sounds like your child is looking for things that are a little bit more on the higher end, because we're looking at like appropriate social speech or that sort of thing. And I think there's some companies that are just beginning to do that. There's a group that I'm about to meet with, and they've designed some games that actually are working on executive functioning skills. And I'm hoping to be able to partner with them and have them help us go faster with our games, because we're developing a lot of games as well. So I'm sorry I can't help you, but if we, what I'll do is I'll try to get our team of people who are putting a list of games together, and we'll try to give that to you, maybe put it up live or on one of our websites, because there's more and more stuff coming out. I'm not really familiar though with anything that would work on like appropriate speech versus inappropriate. I don't know of anything out there. I think most of the games that have come out right now are just basic speech programs, like identifying labels and those types of things. But as I said, this group, I think their company is called Akili, and it's brand new. I think they are doing a bunch of work on higher level executive functioning type stuff. So
interesting.
Yeah, come back to that. I mean, it's a great gift. And I think your child will probably find some good games themselves online.
Yes.
But and I think that next year there will be a lot of really good choices for games on iPads.
And we will get together a list of apps. I just thinking about we don't have an iPad yet. It's one of the things maybe this year, but we have Android phones.
Right.
And I know one of the things that my child and all of his completely neurotypical friends, I don't know whether it's called Tommy Cat or Charlie Cat, it's this cat, and it's a microphone. You speak into the cat, and then the cat says what you said back and responds to it, and you get to manipulate the cat's voice and make it, and they think it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
It's very social for him that he'll say something into it, and then the cat really says it and then changes it, and they'll sit and laugh and just fall apart over it, and it's a 99-cent app. So
that's awesome.
I love the fact that sometimes it's not the big expensive program that you have to buy. It's the 99-cent thing, and it encourages all kinds of speech, and the other kids love it, and it really starts conversations, and somebody will say this.
That's amazing.
And there you go. And you can get outfits for the cat, and one of the
technology these days is crazy.
Isn't it? It's bizarre. Of course, though, and I always say, be careful when you have these apps, because sometimes it's a 99-cent app, and not this particular one, but there are apps where there's an in-app purchase. My son once spent $300 buying a zoo, a virtual zoo. And we got it reversed, but be careful.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Be careful that you set up your device so that they can't make in-app purchases.
Right.
There's a thing you can check on your iPad. It will save you time and grief, I promise you. We're out of time, or are we? Emily, can we ask one more question? Emily says we have time for one more. And Emily rules.
Yeah.
So
we do what Emily says.
We do what Emily says. Okay, here we go. My child has a one-on-one aide. It's so hard to know if she's helping or hurting his progress to be independent. I don't see any fading. I think knowing when and when not to intervene is the most difficult thing for an aide to judge. He has an aide at lunch and recess, but there is not intervention at these key social times. Very frustrating indeed. And you know, the expression that I always hear with aides is they're supposed to work themselves out of a job, but with those school aides, especially in these tough economic times, I don't know how motivated some of them are sometimes to fade themselves out and lose their job.
I just don't think they're trained.
Okay.
And part of the training is it's very, very important to identify the time frames that they need to step in more and the time frames they need to step out. Yeah. And I guess what I would suggest to this parent is to if you can observe your child for the whole day and see what periods of time, regardless of the aide, in fact, better if the aide isn't there, just what periods of time, how your child is functioning, and just highlight the ones where more interaction or more, stepping in from the aide is necessary, and the times where your child on his own is doing better, and that those are the time frames where you really want the aide to start fading out, then maybe that's something you can discuss. If it's a school aide, you can discuss with the school and teacher, and if it's a private aide, then that's something your supervisor can definitely do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sounding like a school aide to me. And I do think it's important for parents to know that in this particular issue, the school's going to be on your side. Sometimes it's adversarial with the school, but if you're wanting the aide to fade, the school is going to be very amenable to that. So if you say, I'd like the aide to not come during this hour so we can observe and see how the child does without, they're going to be thrilled to do that for you. They're going to be on your side on this one because they want the aide to fade.
To reduce as well. But you have to also understand that the fading is not an all or none. So it's it could be. I mean, you could say, I don't need the aide at all during whatever hour. But it's also, this is what I mean when I say like they need training, because it has a lot to do with, you have to be able to identify, do I just need to give the child a tiny prompt? Do I just need to give the child a little bit more time and he will do this independently? Or is this a brand new thing and he's just not interacting and I need to teach him a few things and that'll help? So it's like your interaction level with the child has multiple gradients. It's like I'm full on prompting you to do what you're supposed to do versus steps back to I'm just behind you and all I have to do is tap you on the shoulder and you'll remember what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So there's a lot of, those are the types of details that actually become very important because they lead to either success or failure for the child.
Would you recommend CARD e-learning for those aides, or would you recommend some of the more specialized
There's a
IBT?
whole section actually on the e-learning and also in the IBT teacher training on fading prompts, prompting and fading prompts, and shadowing and all this sort of stuff is very, very important. Yeah.
Okay, great. And we're going to be talking about all that next week. We're really out of time, but all week long we've been talking about games and toys and things, and somebody wants to know if you have a recommendation for a board game for our kids with big, easy directions that would help with social skills.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. If you look in, I think the Roads to Learning magazine has a ton of board games that are just focused on social activity. These are board games that, like speech therapists or psychologists have made for ADHD children or those types of things. So just social problem issues, and there's a lot of them. So
and what's the name of the catalog?
Roads to Learning is the catalog. The educational catalogs that have these board games, and there's so many. Yeah, there's many different options.
Great, fabulous. And somebody else is writing saying we should do a whole show about iPads, and we will get working on that, and apps for the holiday
season. We can do that. In fact, one of several of our supervisors are really, really great at programming iPads to resemble OGG devices, and so that's one of the things that we can certainly do.
Okay, we will get started on that. But I have to let you go. I know you have a busy day, but I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so
I learned
much.
so much, and I know you guys do too. But have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you so much.